As Americans are waiting for their second stimulus check, Nancy Pelosi is doing a pot bill. And of course, earlier today, some viewers said, pot bill, I don't understand that. What does that mean? Oh, it's very simple. You know, terracotta, porcelain, fine china, that type of pot. Sometimes I have to explain everything. You know, it's a pot bill. It's just, I thought it was obvious, but maybe it's not. Captain Obvious needs to walk through the set. But, you know, for some people, some of these things are still sort of a haze. Hey, good evening, everybody. This is LALATE, and you know, Nancy Pelosi's hairdresser is really pissed off because there's no more comments about her. It's all about Nancy Pelosi's pot bill. As we start evenings LALATE on a Saturday night at 6:30 Pacific Standard Time and 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, part of our 1-hour programming block every night. Thank you for joining me. I'm very honored to have you in my presence. Put that smoke out, please, though. If you were Nancy Pelosi, with a bill. Yeah, needless to say, Joe Biden doesn't support the bill either. More about that in a second. But this is part of our 1-hour programming block every night, part of our 3.5-hour programming schedule every day on LALATE. After this video, I'll have a special report, one you'll never see before, and only on this channel, and an in-depth report about a very big issue. The issue is how much money is sitting around from CARES Act 1 that could have been sending you stimulus checks from not just the federal government, but your state and your city. Oh boy, you gotta tune in for that one. As always, subscribe to this channel and drop your comments below, and we may feature them in tomorrow's recording. And also, please hit the like button if you like this video, and if you're reviewing her bill for next week, you may be going like this to try to hit the bell. So make sure you hit the thumb, not the other one that's down. Let's get to the incredible details. Tonight, there's 3 forces that are really behind the movement to get you a stimulus check, whether directly or indirectly, and it's really quite positive. The first is the president. The second are some Democrats who are very uneasy with the Temple Doom. And the third one is you indirectly, the news media. Oh boy, I'm loving this. Let's get to the details. First, the president is behind sending out stimulus checks. The question is when, how, and by what mean. This came to fruition over a week ago as the president repeated his comments we've heard every single week since the month of June. He's represented to the American public. He wants to send out stimulus checks, and he wants them to be generous, more generous than $1,200. At the moment, we're happy with, whatever you can send us out. The latest version of this, well, the penultimate version of this was last Friday when the president said, there's a big slush of money sitting around. I'm ready to use it. Let's go. Well, he hasn't pressed go yet, but less than 24 hours ago, we had incredible, great news. That incredible news first detailed on Morning's LALATE today, where it came from Larry Kudlow. And he said that the president wants to send out stimulus checks, not using the word stimulus anymore, but just checks. And he wanted them to come into the hands of American workers right away. What's really quite great about this is that this is something that's needed, and it's needed right now. We would call them assistance checks, says Larry Kudlow. It's more like liquidity to get into the hands of the American people. He says anything that is well targeted is needed right away. He also gave great news that the president wants to extend to FPUC, enhanced unemployment that goes on top of PUA or UI, that he wants to do that. And the final one that was incredible, great news, with the president wants to do a deal with the Democrats if it involved COVID-related guardrails, namely that money for state and local would only go for COVID-19 issues. But in a minute, I'm going to have more about that as well. Now, as we turn back to stimulus checks, there's another body that's behind the push to get you stimulus checks, and this is great news. They ironically are the Democrats. The Democrats are not happy with the Temple of Doom on two clear issues: stimulus checks and FPUC. They think it's a really bad hot ticket coming into the fall election for Democrats who are up for re-election. They're not the one of the Democrats not up for re-election. This is Temple of Doom, but all of the other ones are very fearful of what's going on. So what happened less than 48 hours ago was Steny Hoyer and other Democrats got on the phone, called the Temple of Doom. She answered the phone after pushing the bats out of the way and the vampires in the corner, and finally said, "Hey, pal, Nan, we're having a problem with the situation. We can't just sit around and not have stimulus checks go out. And we also can't sit around and not have enhanced unemployment go out." Well, her position was, don't do much of nothing. People are going to come to me and I'm going to get everything I want. At this point, it doesn't appear that's ever going to happen. The reason why is that the Republicans are simply not moving because of her $519 billion, $915 billion bailout of states. More about that in a second. So with no progress by the Republicans, the Democrat senators and Democratic House members who are up for re-election are deeply worried that we're just a few weeks away from the election and that there's no relief coming from the hands of Democrats by legislative efforts, and that ultimately all we will see is an executive order potentially from the president that doesn't help a Democrat. It doesn't help a Democrat. How does this pair up for the president and alternatives? Well, ironically, the viewers tapped into this over a week ago. They said the president sending out a stimulus check, not Mitch McConnell doing it by legislative order, does wonders for the president, but it takes away the credit from the legislative body. Let me explain what's going on. When the president does stimulus checks by executive order, he takes the credit for what goes on because no one's involved with an executive order but the president. An executive order by nature is only coming from the White House. You go on this White House website, it's written by the White House, it's on the White House website, it's signed the president, it's signed Donald Trump. No one else's name is on it. It's that type of ownership that the president wants on an even of election to show that he's helping the American public. Now, if he did that with stimulus checks, it's one thing he can provide image and help at the same time. Help to Americans and image to himself. The second one is FPUC. If he extended FPUC, extended LWA, whichever one you call it, it would also be an executive order. It would be in his hand writing, it would be on his website, and it would be by his order. The net result is that Democrats would take no ownership and couldn't take ownership of ever helping the American public. So coming into the fall election, what Steny Hoyer's concern is, and other Democrats that called Pelosi in that massive conference call last week, was that, hey, we can't sit around and do nothing, because nothing could actually get us in a worse result than we are now. And what is that worse result? Democrats doing nothing now, and then the president at the 11th hour doing what's needed, saying, hey, Democrats didn't help you, I got it done. It's that type of, how would you say, sort of quarterback shuffle, quarterback sneak, where you think you have the football as the Democratic Party, you think you have the entire ball to determine how to do stimulus, and the president can do a sneak in the corner and get it done, take the win, and then suddenly say, hey, you did much of nothing. It's a deep concern to Democrats tonight. But there's also other great news, and the great news that I did not see coming, I mean, this is really I'm just very excited for you, is that journalists, mainstream, financial, right, left, are all talking about stimulus checks. It was a week ago I was saying, hey, why is no one talking about stimulus checks? Why is no one talking about stimulus package? Why are they just talking about the post office and Bob Woodward's book and all this other stuff, and they're not talking about your stimulus packages? Now it's very rich. That's a bad expression. Now it's very filled. There's a real vestige, a lot of news coverage suddenly about stimulus checks, stimulus relief, and discussions of about what you and I have been discussing, which was, why was it not in last week's bill? Do Republicans really want to help you? Does the president want to do executive order? How about that $300 billion the president designated last week as sitting around for stimulus relief? How about why there's no focus by the Democrats on stimulus going into next week, that they're doing a pot bill, not porcelain and terracotta? Everyone is now asking the questions you have been asking, because apparently the heat is heating up. And this is really great news in a week in which there is a lot of other scandalous, tantalizing stories they could be running about politics. They're still covering the core for the first time in a way that we have not seen. It's reassuring because it steps up the heat. You, in turn, have also been stepping up the heat. Incredible regards with the Purple Power. I've seen the tweets, I've seen the DMs, I've seen the IG posts, I've seen the Facebook shares of this video, of other videos on this channel, telling your congressional leaders, hey, we can't keep on doing this. And all that seems to be working. It really does seem to be working. So where are we as we start a Sunday? We're on a Saturday night and we're going into a Sunday. Well, I mean, the issue is that you can't have a political party go into a fall election in the middle of a pandemic where millions of Americans are in deep trouble, where 40% of the unemployment of the labor force in California is unemployed, and that the leading representative out of California, Nancy Pelosi, is focused on a pot bill. I mean, it's just, instead of children going hungry, it's adults getting munchies. I mean, what are we doing here? As President Trump said a week ago, again, we have a $300 billion ready to go. All Congress has to do is use it. Well, that's not the focus of Congress as we sit here tonight. The focus of Congress is much of nothing. And this is in the face of polls that show 70% of Americans want stimulus checks. 82% of Democrats want it, 64% of Republicans want it, and 66% of Democrats want it. Now, the big issue as we go into tonight and you watch the video following this one, boy, I'm not gonna hold back my swings because I've never done this type of video before. What I'm gonna do right after this video is going to show you how there's fortunes of money in the state coffers for you as stimulus check, for you as help for rent, for you for help for money for food, and states have not dispersed it. And it's absolutely par for the course of why there has been no auditing of states, counties, cities, federal agencies who got fortunes from CARES Act 1 and have not dispersed it. You know, there's a lot of things to be attentive to, whether it is, Steve Mnuchin and Mark Meadows telling you you're going to get a stimulus check this week, telling you the bill is going to be approved within 1 week and is going to go out this week, whether it's Mitch McConnell, who said that last week's stimulus bill was going to have a stimulus check in it, whether it's President Trump, who's every single week of every single month since the month of June has said you're going to get a stimulus check right away and hasn't even done anything in the face of doing a lot of other not legislative, but executive orders. So as we sit here tonight, there's a couple things to think about. One is keeping faith. Two is remaining positive. And the last one is that you really have to not be skeptical of anyone. I've seen a lot of comments in the last 24 hours where people said, oh, well, that president Trump has not been honest with us about stimulus checks, and Mnuchin has lied to us about stimulus check, and Pelosi has done nothing, and this person's done nothing. Ultimately, I don't want you to cast aside every single politician, because there are politicians out there that hear you, and they do see you. And what's important to understand is that not everything is correct and embellished inside of one person's mind. Nancy Pelosi wants you to believe that the Democratic caucus, as she so calls it, is all aligned to exactly what's in her brain cell at one particular moment. It's simply not true. It's simply not true. We have seen that on a regular basis. So what you need to do is tap into those people who really have your wishes at heart. Next, you need to really tap into the people who've done the legislative bills that you really do subscribe to. For example, Bernie Sanders, he has that bill that's $2,000 stimulus checks every month for 6 months, or until the pandemic improves, or until unemployment goes down. He wrote the bill. Or perhaps, it's Elizabeth Warren, who has an incredible rent bill out there to give you incredible rent aid and eviction moratorium and mortgage forbearance. Or whether, it is Mitt Romney, who has that incredible hazard pay bill out there that gives you hazard pay, that requires the employer to apply for hazard pay, or whether it's that EIDL grant bill that you're very excited about that would give you your EIDL grant, which you never got. You're not here to just subscribe to one person's belief, Nancy Pelosi, or in one person's movement, the President of the United States, because there's a lot of people at risk whose jobs are on the line and want to serve the needs of you as the electorate. So with that, you need to really focus and stay focused as well. As we start this evening, LWA has really great news. States are paying out 6 weeks of LWA, we now know. I detailed that earlier on the unemployment website. LWA is paying 6 weeks in every state. The confusion about LWA is that, some states just can't figure out how they're going to pay it. So I did a video earlier today about California, and the situation's still the same, and it's much the same as every other state, that some states are paying out 1 week or 3 weeks or 2 weeks or 4 weeks. It's just they can't get it straight. It's like Larry Kudlow has passed out calculators to every state. The bottom line is to remain positive and focused. Don't give up hope. Don't be fearful. Don't worry. Just stay calm. In the case of California, they literally say one person on one block could be getting 3 checks today and one person could be getting 1 check. So don't presume that there's something wrong with your file because you got 1 check when your neighbor got 3 checks. It's just the way things are happening. When this channel started on April 25th and I had no subscribers, I was in front of an empty ocean. We're under lockdown in California, couldn't go anywhere internally. My focus was to get people money. My focus was to get people money. My first video was not American Idol. My very first video was not, fluffy duffy. My first video was actually 5 videos, several videos in the very first day. EIDL, PPP, PUA, UI, EIDL grant or EIDL loan. I separated as 2 separate videos. And my focus was, hey, here are all these things that have been created for you under CARES Act 1. Go get this money. And so what I want you to understand is that a lot of that money is still there. With the exception of PPP, it is not. Everything else is still there. Actually, EIDL grant. There, Javita had to, fix the scarves a little bit. But other than that, everything is still there. So go get it. If you're an Uber or Lyft driver, go get an EIDL loan. If you're a Grubhub driver, Postmates, or do Airbnb, go get an EIDL loan. There's no principal or interest for the first year. It's money for you. It's dramatically needed. You'd have it in a couple days. If you ever worked as an employee and were laid off during the pandemic, did you go and get UI? How about PUA? If you're an independent contractor and your hours were reduced because of the pandemic, did you go get PUA? You can get benefits retroactively. Did you know that? You can get $600 a week on top of that under FPUC retroactively if you were impacted because of the pandemic, March all the way up to July. Did you go get that? There's so much out there for you to get, whether it's grants, loans, or instruments besides just a check. And I understand some people are in environments in which they can only qualify for a check, but there's a lot of other stuff out there. Additionally, I always ask my viewers, hey, if you know about a grant program, drop in the comments or send me a DM or send me a tweet. I'll try to make it part of this channel going forward. As we go into a Saturday night, you need to tune in for that next video coming up, in which I really go into the excruciating, shocking details about why there's so much money still out there for CARES Act 1, and none of these people have given you stimulus checks. You're going to be surprised, and I'm not just talking about the president. If there was a time to subscribe to this channel and like the video, it's tonight. We're closing on 250,000 subscribers. The hope of this channel was to try to get to 250,000 in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is tomorrow. tomorrow. I don't know if we're gonna make it, but let's see if we can have a little surge. I think we're 2,000 away or 3,000 away. We're sort of close, but I don't know if we can make it. So go to the front channel and hit the subscribe button. Also hit the alert so you get an alert when a new video goes live. Tell your friends to subscribe. Tell your neighbors. Tell your dog. Tell your cat. Tell your tell the person who sells you the nice plant in the pot. Also, hit the like button on the front channel somewhere. And if you're reading her bell, you might have to hit it in 2 different places. It really helps the algorithm. We've been doing really quite well. Coming up next is another video which you can't miss. As always, stay informed, stay smiling, and stay in LA for more.